In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We hope you find our episodes inspiring, motivating, positive, and thought-provoking. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness.
Welcome to episode number 93 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is action. Our quote of the day comes to us from Evelyn Wan. Your actions and your actions alone determine your worth. I'm very excited to bring you today's episode. Our guest is quite a successful individual that is all about action. From his initial answer up until his parting words, Evan Money does not disappoint. One thing he referenced, which I really enjoyed, was his advice to grab nuggets from everywhere. He also mentions how and why it is so important to have the right mindset. I think you're in a real treat for today's episode.
Evan, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Glorious. Thanks for having me, Chris.
I appreciate you being here. So the first question we ask everybody is, are you ready to make it happen?
Why wouldn't I be? I mean, that's what life's all about. Let's take action now. Let's do it.
Awesome. So the number one objective of our show is to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up. I was curious if you had either a story about perseverance or perhaps a challenging time that tested you, but you kept on going and you didn't quit.
No, and that's great to lead off with. And like we talked about off air, Chris, I mean, that's the thing that nobody sees. And that's what makes this show so unique is, everybody, like we talked about, everyone, we always compare our failures to everybody else's highlight reels. And, looking at everybody's highlight reels, you never see the failures. You never see the moments where they question themselves. You never see gosh, am I on the right track? Is this thing really going to happen? You never see that. You just see, oh, life's so wonderful for them and life's so hard for me. So I think it's important to get all these out so people know, gosh, people are going through it just like I am. So I've got quite a few no-quit stories, and it's really more about a mindset, Chris, rather than just like a one-time where I didn't quit, because my whole life is filled with no-quit stories. So it's really just that mindset of saying, hey, we're going to figure this out one way or the other, and, let's make it happen and let's get going on with this thing. So my no-quit story, the first one I'll share with you, then maybe we can dig in deeper, is really about not quitting on my dream of being happily married. And I just encourage the listeners, just imagine, if you will, you're on one of these cheesy game shows, right? And they're like, this is your life, and you get to choose door number 1, 2, or 3. So behind door number 1, we have married and miserable. Yay! Behind door number 2, we have divorced and desperate. Oh, behind door number 3, we have single and cynical. And that's the only doors I saw people choosing. And I was like, I don't want to do that. There has to be a door number 4. There has to be a way to be totally in love with my bride, have a thriving sex life, and, continue this for year after year after year after year after year. So my bride and I now have, again, I selected door number 4. I didn't give up. And we've been remarried, Chris. We get remarried in a different state or country every year. So as of this recording, I have been married 22 times. And for the male listeners, I now have had 22 honeymoons. Yes! And I will tell you, the sex is fantastic, and it gets better each time. And so a lot of people say, oh, well, gee, that's nice for you. So successful. You have all this money. Well, we didn't have any money in the beginning. And so this is kind of where the never quit moment kind of comes in. So my bride and I, again, we decided, we're like, wow, we were at a seminar that I believe, if I'm being very transparent, we snuck into, or at least I snuck into, got one ticket for my bride, then I snuck in. And when we were first married, we didn't just have no money, we had negative money. So it's kind of tough with your last name being money and not having any. So we're at this seminar. We heard a speaker talk about this guy who gets married every year. And we're like, whoa, wouldn't that be cool to get remarried in a different state or country? And, we're feeling it. It's one of these dream big conferences. And we're just like, yeah, it'd be so awesome. So we committed to doing that. In the back of my mind, Chris, I'm like looking at our financial situation. We live in Southern California. And I was like, well, for our first wedding, we could drive down to Tijuana, which is like a little border town right on the other side of the Mexican border. And no offense to Tijuana, but Tijuana is more for a low-end type experience. And so that was where my mind was. Okay, we can afford this cheap Tijuana wedding. And then maybe next year, the year after, I could save up enough gas money to drive to Arizona. We could do Arizona. And then, by 3 years, we'd have enough money to go to Las Vegas. And so that's where my mindset was, again, of not quitting. But lo and behold, I think God totally has a sense of humor, because we ended up winning a trip. This is classic, Chris. We ended up winning a trip to Paris, all expenses paid. And we got our first honeymoon. We got remarried in the Castle of Versailles, Chris. All 720,000 square feet of the Castle of Versailles. So we were married in the Versailles Gardens in this amazing private ceremony. And I'm thinking Tijuana, and here I am in the Castle of Versailles. So those are some of the blessings from our never quit moment on saying, hey, I want to be happily married and stay happily married. And there's got to be a way to make this work.
Well, full and fair disclosure, I was the one that put you up for that surprise trip to Paris. So you're welcome on that.
Yay!
So wanted to ask you, Evan, if you could real quickly, in maybe 45 seconds or less, just give us the little overview of who you are professionally.
Well, the 45, I can give you the pat answer, right? Happily married, best-selling author, #1 best-selling author, global entrepreneur, producer, speaker, all of that. But at heart, I'm really just an ADD visionary. And I wept literally when I read some of Richard Branson's books, because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only divergent one. Here's another total crazy visionary just like me. And so once I realized, hey, you know what? There's a lot of us out here. I was like, wow. So professionally, I think it's all encompassing. Who I am professionally is who I am personally. I don't have, this is Evan at the office and this is Evan at home. It's just, this is me. And so it all bleeds into everything, because everything affects everything else. So I'm just an ADD visionary, and we have a conglomerate of companies, and our mission statement for all of them is we bring people's dreams to life. So that's what we're all about.
No, I like that, and I appreciate you sharing that. Here's a different question for you. If you had to define yourself in one word, what would that word be?
That's a good one. The thing that jumps out to me, first of all, well, probably two. One would be energy, enthusiastic energy, and the next one would be action. So, yeah, I know your first question, you're ready to make it happen. My first best-selling book was called Take Action Now. So I'm all about, let's take action. Let's get this thing going. So either energy, action, or enthusiasm. Those are the top three. So I'll let you pick one.
No, I like that. And one of the things, as I mentioned off air, is we talk about is accountability and self-accountability. And we have what we think are the 3 A's for accountability, which are #1, action, application, and attitude. So I'm glad you shared that action piece, because it is a great word. And we've had so many guests on our shows that have talked about action, and I think we've mentioned this so many times, is you could have the best information, you could have the best material, but if you take zero action, it's meaningless. Just as if you have mediocre opportunities or tools, but you take a massive amount of action, you're going to be way more successful than you would if you don't take any action. So I'm glad that you mentioned both energy and action. I think they're 2 great words.
Oh, and let me give you a fun story on that side. So we'll go back to the lowest common denominator. Even if you don't have anything, Chris, and you take action, great things happen. So I'm sitting in my living room. I was actually frisking the mailman, waiting for my Netflix documentary to come. I had one in the queue that I was really excited about. And it finally came, so I sat down, I watched it, and it was okay. So I enjoyed the content, who was doing it, and I just got this overwhelming feeling, Chris. I was like, man, how hard can that be? You're just running around interviewing people, having a great time. It's like, that can't be that hard. So I got a vision in my mind to do a documentary on the power of words. And so I'm in my shower and I get a great idea. And this is what I teach in a lot of our seminars and our talks. I think everyone, real estate in Connecticut is pretty high, but I think everyone on your show listening has a $20 million shower in their home. because we all have $20 million worth of ideas in the shower, and most people never take them out. They're still there. So I have a waterproof notebook, Chris, in my shower that I write things down when I get that great idea in the shower, because once it's on a piece of paper, I can bring it out of the shower and there's more chances that I will take action on that and can do something with. So I got this great idea for a documentary called Words of Art. I had zero experience making documentaries. I was like, how hard can this thing be? So I started cold calling all these big names, trying to get them in my documentary. And they're like, well, great. Tell us about your last documentary. I was like, well, let me tell you about the vision. So I had nothing. And being able to hear yeses from some of the biggest names in the personal development industry and people like Joel Osteen and all of that. And so, again, all I had was a vision and a dream and action, and great things happened. So I think that'll help some of the people in there that are like, it has to be perfect. As soon as it gets perfect, I'll take action. So it's action first, everything else second.
No, I like that. And just to touch on your point for a second, I heard something, actually heard it a couple times, is the most valuable real estate in the world is cemeteries. And I remember the first time I heard it, and I kind of didn't really understand. And then the speaker went on to say that, and the reason being is that that's where all the movies were never made, all the books that were never written, all the billion-dollar business ideas, the amazing relationships were never consecrated. And I just remember thinking back when I heard that, I said, wow, that's a really powerful concept. And similar to your $20 million shower, I don't know per se if my shower is worth $20 million. I hope it is. I'm going to see if I can sell it on the market today.
There you go. And all the ideas, you just say, okay, they're all pre-trademarked. There you go. Take it.
So one of the things we talk about is personal development, and many of our listeners are looking to improve different areas of their lives. I was curious if you have either a favorite book or something that you've read recently that you'd like to share with our listeners.
Oh, absolutely. No, personal development is actually what literally changed the course of my life, and I still had to do the work and everything else, but so I'm huge on the personal development side. So yeah, I've got books, I've got all kinds of stuff. We can go down the line, but for those listening and for those that are have anything to do with speaking, any type of love for personal development, I have something I think you'll really enjoy. So we'll go down the line here. So this is humble brag here, but if you're an Amazon Prime member, you can get my movie Words of Art is included in your Prime membership. And so we interviewed all the greats of the Joel Osteens, the Zig Ziglars, the Dennis Waitley's, the Darren Hardys, and political speechwriters and rappers and people like radio hosts and anything that had to do with the spoken word and tying into personal development. That is a great click. If you're a Prime member, grab that, called Words of Art. And then as far as books and authors and all of that, I mean that's a 2-hour podcast. But I'll give you just some of the top. So for me, the book of Proverbs, I think, is as good as it gets, because when you whittle down all these business books that I think for the most part are overwritten, you can grab it in one little bite-sized nugget by reading Proverbs, and you can apply it instantly. And it's just like, oh, wow. And it doesn't hurt that most of it was written by the world's wealthiest man. So he understands finances as well. So Proverbs is huge. The next one, as far as relationships, is The 5 Love Languages by Dr. Gary Chapman. And what's interesting about that, Chris, that book has been on the bestseller, like New York Times bestseller list for over 20 years, Chris. 20 years on that list. Something's going on when it's been on there that long. So that one's just a total game changer. And then as far as mindset, I think Atlas Shrugged is a must. I mean, that book is just so many great principles out of that book. And then for those that really want to dive in or kind of spiritually divergent like myself, there's a great visionary wrote a book called Wide Awake by Erwin McManus. And that thing lit me up like a Christmas tree. I was like, whoa, my gosh, wow. And I've recommended it to different people. And some people are just like, I don't know what he was talking about. And other people just like, oh, just like me. So those are a few of the big ones.
No, I appreciate you sharing that with us, and that's one of the best parts about the show is from each guest, I almost get to have a couple more add-ons to my Amazon Prime account, which I will definitely check out your movie, but I appreciate you giving some of those recommendations as well. And that's really something that's neat about our show is even though I bring and invite guests on, I always learn from different people about what they're reading or what they're watching and or how it's either helped them, inspired them, or given them a great idea or something like that. So I appreciate you sharing that. And the 5 Love Languages is a very unique book in many different ways, and I think not just from a relationship perspective, but just individually, I think you can probably learn a lot about yourself in so many different ways that you probably never thought about before.
Oh, and that's the best part, too. I mean, so many people try to read it for the other person, right? Well, I'm going to read this for my spouse. It's like, no. You need to read it for you. And it changes everything. I mean, it changes how you interact with people. It's so dynamic. And again, that's the reason why for 20 years, everybody's been grabbing that. I mean, yeah, spectacular.
I was thinking about writing the 5 Love Languages 2.0 and just, see if it sells just because.
Oh, no, I'm with you on that line. I've thought about that. I've gotten close, but, the publishers have come back. I mean, he's got the 5 love languages of everything. It's kind of this franchise. But the one that will go for sure is the 5 love languages of pets. That will be a $1 billion bestseller the way Americans are with especially baby boomers with their pets. I mean, that one would go off the charts.
Hold on a second. I just bought the domain name on GoDaddy.
See, taking action. I love it.
Yep, action. So one of the things we talk about every day on our show is a daily quote. And I was curious if you have a favorite quote yourself.
Oh, yeah. Let me give you the backstory briefly. I have digested this quote I've been digesting this quote for 30 years because this is the first quote where it actually like pinged me and got me thinking and got me going, wow. And it's from Jim Rohn. And he says, it's not what you get that makes you valuable. It's what you become. And I just meditated on that like, wow, you're right. It isn't what I get that makes me valuable. It's what I become. And he said one of the best questions you can ask for the job people that are listening or even the business owners, when you're doing your business, it's not the question to ask is not what I'm getting here. The question you ask is what am I becoming here? And that totally shifted my life because I looked at where I was when I first heard it and I'm like, I don't like who I'm becoming. And just listening to that kind of gave me permission to change. And that's what personal development did for me. It was like, hey, I can change. I'm not stuck here. I can move. I can shift. So the simple truth, it's not what you get that makes you valuable. It's what you become.
That's a great quote. And I don't have the quote in front of me, but it reminds me of another quote which speaks about who you become and how you become during a journey, and whether that's business, life. And I just think it's so important because it's not just about who you become or what you are. It's also what you give and what you learn along the way.
Absolutely.
Here's an interesting question for you. If you could magically snap your fingers and improve one area or one characteristic of yourself right this minute, what would it be?
I thought you were going to ask me the underwear question, but maybe we'll get to that one. As enticing as that question is, it's always, it's the classic, oh, it's the lottery, it's the this, it's the that. And maybe if it was possible, I think it's the becoming is where the value is. So if I could snap my finger, then I wouldn't appreciate it. I'd probably be back in that same pattern. But the biggest challenge for me that I'm facing at this stage is really the patience level with my children. So to this day, my bride, again, we've been married 22 times. We have a dynamic sex life. Life is tremendous. But with my bride and I have never had a fight. And some people are like, what are you talking about? What's going on? And, we have disagreements, but we agreed early on, I respect you way too much to raise my voice at you, to talk to you in a derogatory way. So my bride and I have never had a fight. But I have raised my voice multiple decibel levels with my children. And the fuse with my bride is like 10 miles long, Chris. It's like, oh, yeah, no problem, whatever. Because I consistently focus on filling her love tank, and she feels on focusing mine. That's from the 5 love languages. But my kids, the fuse is like, Chris, is less than a nanosecond. I mean, my son can do one thing, and it's like, boom, I'm on him. I'm just like, whoa, where's this coming from? So the patience and the anger and all that towards my children, that's the area of major growth for me. And I'm making strides there, but it's a challenge. And I think a lot of it comes to this. I have such a high expectation for my kids, and to see them not living up to it, I have to remind myself, it's like, you know what? My kids don't have a USB port in the back of their head, so I could just download all the books that I've read, right? All the learning I've done, all the personal development. It's like, oh, I actually have to teach them. Oh, yes, okay. So it's a patience level for me is what I'm working on.
No, I couldn't agree more. I have 3 young kids myself, and it's a challenge, and I think it's why parenting is one of the best and the most challenging things as well. So I'm glad you shared that. So one of the things we're always looking to do is to provide value and calls to action for our listeners. And I was curious if you had either a specific morning or daily ritual that you can attribute some of your personal or professional success to.
Yes, definitely, Chris. So first one, for me, I talk about what true success really is. And most people live these one pillar lifestyles. And typically in the US, it's finances. Oh yeah, is the poster child for the one pillar lifestyle. That pillar is so tall, but you can't support anything. And, the classic, right? You spend all our time, we sacrifice our health and our relationships to, make money or to build a business, right? And then we spend all that money that we made trying to restore our health, get our health back, and restore our relationships. And so it's this catch-22. So I think you have to have all three. You have to have health, relationships, and finances. So the daily rituals, for me, as far as health-wise, is I move. I move my body. We're such a sedentary, lifestyle. Park yourself in front of the desk, sit down to work, sit at work, sit home, then go watch TV. So I make a conscious effort to move. So I have a daily ritual of stretches and exercises that in the beginning, it was like, what am I doing this for? But once it becomes a habit, it's just like, I just move. I'm moving my body. And the next daily ritual is reading. I'd love to say I read a book every day. I hear some of these hard charging guys talk about that. It's like, well, that's good for you, pal. But, I've got these small windows in between kids and my bride and businesses. So I read every day, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, but it's constantly reading something. And then the last one, again, so we got health, we got finances, and the last one is I romance my bride. That is a daily ritual of keeping her love tank filled. And so, again, you got to go back to the 5 love languages, but that's a daily deal. It's not a, hey, what are you going to do for me? It's, okay, filling my wife's love tank, reading, and moving. Those are the 3 dailies.
Now, I appreciate you sharing that, and I think most people that we've interviewed come from all different walks of life and all different levels of success, whether it's personal, professional, relationship, family. And I think most people have their own spin on daily rituals. Some are crazy intense, some are pretty simple. But I think what I've found is that most people have something that they do. And one of the things I love about the show is sharing ideas with the listeners. And what hopefully happens is different things resonate differently with each listener, and I appreciate you sharing a little bit about what you do daily, because that's how we all can learn from each other.
Oh, no, that's the magic, because so often as guys, and I'll speak for myself, with our egos and all this stuff, if somebody gets in my face and tells me, yeah, you need to do this and this and this, it's like, I'm going to do the exact opposite. But I love listening in and listening to other tips and just grabbing stuff. And so that's how I've created success, is listening to podcasts like this and, reading books and other stuff. It's so valuable just to grab those little nuggets. So, whether it's, oh my God, maybe I will move this morning, or well, maybe I will pick up something, or maybe I will be better to my bride. That's the magic, is the picking up of other successes. So you don't have to learn the hard way. So kudos to you again, Chris, for a great podcast.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. And I have to say, I've copied, stolen from many, many other podcasts out there as far as ideas, listeners. So it's a really interesting world. So I wanted to ask you a little bit different question. If you could go back and give the 20-year-old version of yourself just one piece of advice, what would that be?
Well, the challenge was the 20-year-old version of myself wouldn't listen to it. And that was the mindset. So at 20, I was enrolled in Surf Bum University, which is basically I spent all my time surfing and working with something I did in between surfing. And so at that mindset, wouldn't matter who told me anything. I wasn't listening. And it wasn't till I got to a point in my probably mid-20s when I finally was able to listen. And that's when I found that Jim Rohn quote through a pirated cassette tape, Chris, which I still own. I still have the cassette tape on my shelf. That's when I was actually able to listen. So yeah, I'd love to give all this wisdom to the 20-year-old self, but it would have been one ear out the other. It would have been like, dude, hey, Baldy, get out of here. What are you talking about? So he wouldn't have listened. So that's the simple truth on that one.
Follow up, another different question is, if you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
I love that question. I asked that to other people. I have 2. So from we'll go 2 sides. So on a regular side, Ronald Reagan, I would just love to sit down with Ron and just talk. I mean, the more I read about him, the more I study. I mean, that guy, just so incredible. His journey. And a lot of people don't know one fun story about Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan got into politics because of taxes. And a lot of people don't understand, and especially in Connecticut, there's a lot of people that are going, man, taxes are too high. It's like, well, in Ronald Reagan's day, the top tax rate was 90%, Chris. 90%. So how can taxes be too high if they used to be 90%? So that's what drove Ronald Reagan into politics, was saying, man, this 90% taxing, we got to get rid of that. And that kind of set him on the way. But the other person I'd love to go, and I'm going back to Larry King, I would love to sit down with Jesus. I mean, that was Larry King's big interview that he'd want to do. And I'd love to do the same. I read a fun book recently called Dinner with a Stranger. And it's a fictional book about a guy getting an invite from dinner from Jesus. And it's this dude in a blue suit, and he's just talking to him. But yeah, I'd have 1,000 questions on, okay, why is this? And what about this? And how about that? So those are the two for me.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
There you go.
Sorry, that's my impression of Ronald Reagan. No, it's interesting that we ask that question to every guest on our show, and we get all different answers from all different walks of life. Some are alive, some are dead, and I always find it just interesting of the different people that the guests choose. And usually there's what I find either a crazy, unique story, or sometimes it's just something as simple as I've really liked this person, or I've followed him or her. So I always appreciate people sharing their 2 cents of that. So I appreciate that. What if I were to be able to set up a dinner with you, Ronald Reagan, and Jesus? How would that work?
Woo! Absolutely. And going back to Reagan, the other thing I think why I'm drawn to him is because he's a guy that romanced his bride through his whole life. And he's a guy that a lot of people, I mean, if you go back to the backstory, I mean, Reagan was the guy. I mean, he was an A-list actor. Then he went to, the whole thing with the GE tour and then politics. And I mean, sustaining a level of romance, at that stage to the level that he did is just so enamoring to me. And I think that's one of the big draws. But also, Reagan was a football star too, man. He was tough. I mean, a lot of people know the old Reagan, but as a kid, man, he was a lifeguard, football star. I mean, he was the guy.
The Gipper.
But that's right. And he played real football, not two-hand touch and flag football in the NFL now, where you can't breathe on the quarterback, you get a flag.
And no face masks either.
Dude, we're talking leather helmet. What seats? What the heck's a concussion? That wasn't even invented back.
No,
so he was tough as nails, superstar. I mean, incredible. But yeah, Reagan and Jesus sitting down. Oh man, we'll bring you into that one. Have a foursome. That would be spectacular.
I don't think, no offense to either of us, I don't think we'd have much to say. We'd probably do most of the listening.
Yeah, we just turn on the recorders and be like, oh, check out this podcast. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, Evan, if there's anything exciting that you're working on or about to release that you'd like to share with our listeners.
See, Chris, those are great plugs. We love that. So yes, so if you're listening to this, and I'm talking to my entrepreneurs that picture this: racing Porsches, swimming with dolphins, doubling your business, and growing personally like never before. So if that lights you up and is like, wow, well, let's do that. That's what we're currently working on. We have a group of 25 select individuals that we're inviting to join us to do just that. Race Porsches, swim with dolphins, double your business, grow personally like never before. We're talking great growth leaps. And it's called Grow, Thrive, Revive. And that's the website, growthriverevive.com. And we would love to have you out for that. It's going to be an intimate group. And again, we're just talking with entrepreneurs that hear that and it's like, man, who wouldn't want to race Porsche, swim with dolphins, double my business and grow? Let's do it. So that's a big project we're working on. And then for those that are readers, because readers are leaders, right? So my number one bestseller, Money Talks, Negativity Walks. You can grab that on Amazon. And that is short, bite-sized, little nuggets of encouragement, things you can easily digest. And then, get on your way with. And a lot of people have really enjoyed that book. I've had a lot of people, some interesting folks call me like, man, I'm reading this for the third time. This is incredible. I'm like, really? Wow. Okay. So Money Talks, Negativity Walks. We would appreciate you guys picking that up in triplicate. That's my favorite line that I stole from another famous author, Malcolm Gladwell, who happens to be my hair mentor. And for those of you who've seen either of our pictures, you know the joke with that. But whenever he speaks, he's like, yeah, please pick up my book in triplicate. I'm like, oh, that's why he's on the New York Times #1 bestseller. That's the deal. So Money Talks, Negativity Walks.
I like it. That's something that I think we all could use more of. So before we let you go, Evan, I wanted to ask you if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners.
Parting words. Well, I mean, we've kind of talked about it the whole way through. I mean, the real value comes down to becoming, not getting. And how you become is when you take action. So I would just encourage people to go back in their shower and go, man, I know there's some great ideas in here. What if I brought those to life? What if we really did that? And then the other fun thing I'd love people to do is I've got about 15,000 followers on a new social media platform. It's pretty cool. It's called Hear Me Out. It's called Hear Me Out. And basically it's an audio Twitter, Chris. So the classic, social media, like, hey, you can put up these glossy pictures and you can put up these cool quotes or these memes and everything looks perfect, like the sizzle reel, right? But when it's audio, the voice doesn't lie. You can really tell if people are happy or sad or whatever. So this is like an audio Twitter. So it's really cool. It's gaining traction. It's called Hear Me Out. So for those folks that sounds interesting to, check it out. You can post audios. And it's short. You get 45 seconds, post an audio, listen to others' audio. It's really cool. Hear Me Out.
See, I learned something new every single episode.
There you go. And I'm not even an angel investor. This is just something a friend told me about. I was like, hey, this is cool.
Well, is it too late to become an angel investor? Can we go back in time real quick?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like, man, where was I when he first gave me that idea? Darn it.
And last question, Evan, and I promise it'll be the easiest one, is what's the best way for our listeners to follow you or connect with you?
Well, the website is always a fun one. So that's evanmoney.com. And there's a lot. I really encourage people to go to the Dream Come True tab. And it's not about like, oh, look at me. But I just want to encourage people to live their dreams and kind of look at some of the wacky stuff I've done and go, gosh, if this bald-headed spazzy dude can do that, imagine what I could do. So it's kind of a rekindling for others' dreams. So you can go to evanmoney.com, click on the Dreams Come True tab. And I think you have a lot of fun with that. And I think it will really inspire and encourage a lot of your listeners to actually do those things that they've been talking about. I hear the classic bucket list, which is the lamest term ever. It's about a take action now list. So I encourage you to click on that and go, man, look, this is fun. I want to do that too. So evanmoney.com, check it out.
I like that take action now list. And full and fair disclosure for our listeners, Evan's real last name is Money, Money. And no, he is not related to Eddie Money.
Yes, and now the too fun thing was I was not born with any, for sure. And that my bride, to her credit, because this is big in Southern California and also Connecticut. I know you guys are high rollers out there, but my bride was unashamed to marry money. So that was for sure. The challenge was she thought I had at least a little bit when she married me, and she soon found out, like, oh, wow, what are all these negatives and what are all these credit card bills? What's going on? This is a little different deal. But to her credit, she stayed with this visionary, and now things have turned around thanks to me turning around my mindset. So I will leave the podcast with encouraging people that in order for things to get better, you have to get better. In order for things to grow, you have to grow. In order for things to change, you have to change. So the sooner you take action, the better.
No, I love it. That's probably some of the best parting words we've had. So listen, Evan, I can't thank you enough, not only for being on our show, but also the information you shared. And hopefully our listeners will connect with you. As I mentioned earlier, I know that I will definitely check out your Amazon Prime movie tonight.
Woohoo!
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for listening to episode number 93. Evan Money loves life, and it would be impossible to miss his enthusiasm and positive attitude. With certain guests, I just get a good vibe, and I definitely got that today from Evan. When it comes to his marriage, he has a pretty real approach towards what success in that arena looks like to him. Whether or not you agree with him is your choice, but what he and his wife are doing clearly works for them. He touched upon action many times throughout today's episode, clearly being one of our favorite words that really hit home. Evan's first book that he ever wrote was also titled Take Action Now. Evan referenced his waterproof notebook that he uses in the shower, and he mentioned that is where many of his $20 million ideas came from. One thing Evan mentioned in his closing remarks was the importance of taking action. He said it's important to have a vision and a dream, but then make sure you take action and good things will happen. So my question for you today is this: what actions are you not taking? Is it the fear of something new? Perhaps it's doing something out of your comfort zone. No idea, business, book, movie, or relationship was ever created from taking zero action. I challenge you today. If you have a goal, a dream, or a vision, take the first step of action today. Do something. Don't think, wish, or put off until another day, week, or year. Decide to take action today and go for your greatness.
And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.